All right.
We're good?
We're gonna put it.
Okay.
I'll tell everybody.
So what's the deal? We're recording. Perfect, perfect. So are we set then?
We're ready to start.
We're ready. Then I am going to call the meeting of the Cincinnati Board of Park Commissioners to order. And we have with us Vice Chairman Molly North, Commissioner Phyllis McCollum, and Commissioner Kik Lee. Susie Castellini is not with us today. So with that, we will first start with public comments. We just have one today. And Morgan Regaud's up for public comment. Thank you for being here.
Thank you all. I'm just here to say that the skating program is going very, very well. We've had our first two parties. At the first one, we had over 400 in attendance, no major accidents, tons of fun. And that was a green light night. So the opening was really successful. People are excited. We're offering rentals through partnership with CRC. Our last one, Pride Stride, had 2 drag performers. And over 300 in attendance, no major injuries, was a success. And we're feeling some love from City Hall this week after receiving some South District TIF funding. We hope that some more support is on the way. But what I'm most proud of is that 2 council members approached us and said that this was the best organized park advocacy they had ever seen. And another one said that we've gone about this in exactly the right way. So I just wanted to share that with you today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Morgan.
Thank you. And I'll just comment that we do, as you know, receive public comments via email or regular mail. And we've gotten emails this month about issues at the Westwood Town Hall Playground. We've got notices about the elevator at Smale Park downtown. And then one that I would like to have some feedback on is the continuation of rocks being thrown from Bellevue Park. Do we know, is there anything that we can do? We did a lot of work there and.
Yes, Commissioner, we double reinforced all of the fencing as much as we could, all the way down until essentially it runs out of place to double reinforce. And within a month of doing it, it's cut open next to everything that we just did. So a lot more may need to be done if that's going to be, we know that it's true. I mean, we thought at first it was just stuff falling off of the edge, but we know after seeing things that physically could not happen that way, people are actually throwing stuff off of there. So maybe some coordination with the police. I'm not sure on that, or a much probably bigger project to close that area completely. It's up to you all if you want us to pursue. That's kind of the.
Well, I'll leave it to you all to think through that. Clearly, at least make sure that the police department is aware that this is a continuing issue. Perhaps they could do more patrols or something, but I'll leave that to you. But it is obviously something from a public safety standpoint that's a concern.
Unfortunate to hear, Commissioner, because we thought with clearing the rock and all that a lot of those problems had subsided. So I'm sad to hear this kind of, so we'll pursue it, look into it for sure.
Great, thank you. Thank you. Okay, moving into our next section, administrative actions, approval of May 18 minutes. I hope you've had an opportunity to read through these. Any additions, corrections, changes for the minutes? If not, I'll entertain a motion for approval.
So moved.
And a second? Second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Thank you. Those are approved. And we have a couple presentations today. So Jason, I'll turn over to you to introduce.
Yeah, excellent. So we're first joined by Justine Ludwig, who has spent some time living in Cincinnati, but now is in New York City and is the head of Creative Time, which is an arts organization that puts on public art exhibits all around the world. And a couple of years ago, they came to Cincinnati Parks with American Manifest, which is this multi-part, I don't want to get too far into it, but this big art project in which one of the exhibits they'd like to have at Smale Park. They've worked with staff over the last year or so to identify kind of vet several different spots, but we now have one spot we think is kind of the best option. But I'd like to invite Justine up to give this presentation about American Manifest and how it integrates with Cincinnati Parks.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Good morning, Justine.
Good morning.
Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. It's truly an honor to be able to present this project to all of you. And as Jason mentioned, I'm the former curator at the Contemporary Art Center here. Lived here 15 years ago. I have a deep love for the city, and it's such a privilege to be able to come back here, spend time with the community that I so deeply love, and present this very important project to you that we've been working on for quite a few years now. I can show off, please. A little background on Creative Time, so you know who we are. We are a major public arts organization based in New York City, but we do projects all over the world. We even have a project currently in outer space. So we are familiar with working with radically different environments for the work that we do. And we believe that art should be rooted in communities where we present art, and also that they should address the most pressing issues of our time. That this is not work that's existing with this silo, but this is truly transformative. So a few projects that we've done in the past. Next slide, please. We are known for the 2 beams of light that replaced the Twin Towers post 9/11 in New York, which still shows every year as a memorial moment in the city. Also, next slide, please. Parawalker's The Subtlety, which was this giant sugar sphinx in the Domino Sugar Factory, which was known as one of the most important artworks of the last decade. So we had visitors from all over the world come see that. Another example is Heard with the artist Nick Cave, in which he had these figures dancing throughout Grand Central Terminal. So we're used to doing unexpected activations that are very challenging in terms of mounting them. So we know how to take on ambitious projects in really meaningful ways. And we're very site specific in everything that we do, hyper intentional. So the way that we're bringing this project to Cincinnati is rooted in the history of this community and the wealth of culture and history that exists within the region. So we're also known for convening called The Summit. This is an image of us taking part in the Venice Biennale, where we bring people together from all different walks of life, all different fields, to talk about the most pressing issues of our time and how we can make the world a better place collectively. But I'm here to talk about Charles Gaines' The American Manifest, which is a project that we've been working on for over a decade, which launched in New York City, but it's always been conceived of as a dual city project happening in New York. So Cincinnati, Ohio, which you'll see from our graphic design here, which includes an image of Cincinnati and all of the branding that we also showed in New York City. This is a dream project by the artist Charles Gaines, who is based in Los Angeles, who is known as an artist, but also an educator. He has taught generations of younger artists and is really ambitious in his thinking. This is truly his dream project. He's been thinking about this, investing in this for many, many years. So we're thinking about the American Manifest as a project cited in 2 historically influential American cities, New York and Cincinnati, and tracing the significant waterways and ports of the Northeast. The American Manifest asks the public to consider the enduring legacies of colonialism and slavery that shape our lives today. So this is a project that looks at larger narratives of forced migration in the United States. So it's a multifaceted project. The central piece, which Jason Barrett mentioned, is Moving Chains, but to give some context, there are 2 other elements that we're working closely with other organizations in the city to realize here. One is Manifestos 4. We had an amazing meeting with the Symphony yesterday about this piece, and it is a performance of the Supreme Court decision that is known as the Dred and Harriet Scott decision, which deemed that Black people were not US citizens and therefore cannot sue for the right to freedom. This is an unbelievably important, seminal decision that was made by the Supreme Court, yet many people are completely unaware of it, which is something that's quite shocking and an important part of our history that we need to be mindful of. We staged it in Times Square. This is the image that you see here. Times Square is a hustling, bustling part of the city, but it went quiet for a while as this performance happened, which was an unbelievable experience. We had hundreds of visitors that were ticketed to come, and then a couple hundred that actually just happened across the piece and spent an hour experiencing this work. And we're hoping to bring it here, but in a radically different environment, putting it outside in a natural environment. Next slide, please. And then another work that we're looking to cite very close to here with the Art Museum, which is Roots, which is a series of these inverted sweet gum trees. These are trees that are native to New York and also the Cincinnati region, oddly enough. They're not everywhere in the United States, but these are 2 locations where you find them. And these are actual trees that were dead, that have been uprooted, and you see their root systems reaching out. What it is a conversation about these histories that are underground, these stories that exist within this nation's history that about the importance to invert that, to talk about that in a meaningful way. And thinking about these deep sort of shared narratives that exist within this nation. It is a beautiful and ghostly piece. Next slide, please. You can see here. So it potentially might be right outside your window. That's one of the locations that we are looking at. So it's slightly surreal looking at the window and seeing it. And another location we're looking at is Mirror Lake. Next slide, please. But the main piece that we're talking about is moving chains. This is currently located on Governor's Island in New York. If you are visiting New York, I would love to show the piece to you in person because it's one thing to see it in images and it is a radically different thing to experience it in person. It is a kinetic sculpture. It moves, it makes sound. You walk through it and there are these 9 giant moving chains overhead. 8 of those chains are moving at the rate of the waterways surrounding the artwork, while the center one is moving at a pace that reflects boats that would carry individuals and cargo. Those waterways surrounding the artwork. And as you walk through it, the piece rumbles and you feel it in your body. And something that's been so beautiful is when people come to the artwork, they don't just quickly walk through it, they sit in it, they lean against the wall. It's a moment for quiet reflection. It's a moment where you feel history in your body in a really transformative and beautiful way. And it runs on a cycle. So there's a period of time while the chains are rattling and you feel that, and then it goes quiet. And what that does is it reorients your understanding of space, the way that you're relating to water or bird sounds or the sounds of people talking and playing surrounding the artwork. And I'm so excited about how different and transformative this piece is going to feel on the banks of the Ohio River. We're looking at a location that is near the Roebling Bridge, a bridge that sings. And I think it's going to be amazing when you hear these chains suddenly stop and you hear the water and you hear cars traveling over this bridge that brings you between Ohio and Kentucky. And you hear children playing in the distance. And it centers you in this conversation around freedom and legacy and what this nation stands for, the potential of this nation as well. And so I think it's so beautiful envisioning how transformative this piece can be in different locations. Where it's sited currently in New York, you have a view of the Statue of Liberty, Ellis Island in Lower Manhattan, where there was a slave market. So it brings those histories into such sharp focus. And in Cincinnati, it's a radically different conversation in such close proximity to the Freedom Center sitting on the banks of the Ohio. Next slide, please. Just in the sense of scale, an image of an individual walking through the piece. The piece also changes radically during the course of the day as the shadows change, as the piece you smell it. The wood has a beautiful sort of scent to it that changes if it's wet out, if it's dry out. So it's this piece that people come back to time and time again. Next slide, please. We've also been doing a lot of school groups that have been visiting this piece, a lot of curriculum that has been built around this artwork in New York, which is something that we intend to do in Cincinnati, Ohio as well. Next slide, please. A view from above or from below. It's been up since last year. We had to close it for a little bit during the winter. So the intended run that we're going to do in Cincinnati means that we won't have to close it for the winter. We're looking at having it from April through the fall next year, ideally. But it has brought people from different parts of the world, different parts of the country specifically to come visit this piece. And I have no doubt that it's going to have the same resonance and power here. It's been beautiful having conversations with people who are visiting in New York and saying, I have to come see it in Cincinnati and see how it resonates in a very different way in that context. It's been written up in the New York Times 3 times, which is unheard of. Next slide, please. Some other pieces of press. We've received over 35 major mentions and important pieces of press. We've received over 20,000 visitors that have come through the piece and spent time with it, and nearly 500,000 that have come by it in a much more passive way. It's going to be up through the fall of this year in New York, so we have no doubt those numbers are going to go a lot higher. And in Cincinnati, we'll also have a similar and high turnout experiencing this piece. Next slide, please. Something that's also very central to this artwork, it truly takes a village to realize it. So we're working with a lot of local partners, and there was mention of a partners meeting yesterday, which is a really beautiful opportunity. For nearly 4 years, we've been working with Wave Pool, which is an amazing organization based here in Cincinnati that's very community oriented. We're also working with the Cincinnati Art Museum on Roots, the Symphony for presenting manifestos for. Photofocus has been a partner on the project also for the last few years, and they're looking to host a convening where we can talk about the ideas behind the project before the project opens, citing that at the Freedom Center. We've also been working closely with the Freedom Center about having it be part of their docent program so that we can do strong tours for the project itself and build meaningful curriculum around it. Hoping to have the Parks Department, as we need them to be a major partner on this to realize it at the highest level in the location that we dream of doing it. Also, other partners that we're deep in conversation with are the Contemporary Art Center, Black Art Speaks, 21C Museum Hotel, Artwork Cincinnati, ArtsWave, and the Art Academy, among many others that I didn't get official permission to put on the slide just yet, but if this presentation was next week, I'd probably have a few others that I'd be able to add to this. But this is an opportunity to talk about the wealth of cultural institutions that we have within the city and the amazing cultural community that lives here. There are so many brilliant artists that are dealing with some of the ideas that this project brings to the fore. So there are so many opportunities for activations and conversations that are also rooted directly in the people that live here that are part of this community on a daily basis. We also had to essentially invent new technology for this piece to happen. That's why it took 10 years to make. So we were working with an amazing team of engineers and experts to realize this project. We so rarely get to do projects more than once. So we learned the rough parts of it in New York. We got that out of the way. So we know the challenges that we face. And we have built a really strong team in order to realize it here. Next slide, please. Just some milestones of what we're looking towards. The project will be running through September in New York. I would love for some of you to see it if you have the opportunity. In July, we're really focusing on our partner agreements so we can officially announce this in a meaningful way in the community, listing everybody that's working on the project and the ways in which they're going to be partnering with us. Then we'll announce in October, the project happening, the convening that we're talking about happening at Freedom Center with Photofocus is slated for October. Then October through February, we'll be working on pre-production, getting the piece in perfect shape to come here. We'll ship here in March and then install and hopefully open here in Cincinnati in April. I know that's a lot of information. I'm happy to answer any questions I can to the best of my ability. I'm representing a huge team of people that are working very hard on this project, but can answer any questions.
Thank you, Justine.
Thank you.
Let's open it up. Any questions or?
This is amazing. It's amazing. It's very exciting.
I'm particularly thrilled at the location for this piece of it down on the river, and besides the artistic value of it, just the educational aspect too, and combining with the Freedom Center right there. It's a great opportunity, especially if you're bringing kids in from schools and everything, doing that tour and combining it with the rest of the story. It's sort of like hearing a story and then somewhat experiencing what might have happened at that point in time. So I think it sounds very dynamic.
So just to speak to the site real quick. There we go. First of all, interestingly, I was in New York City last summer between when you guys named me the Parks Director and between when I started. I got away to New York and I saw the in Times Square, and it didn't even necessarily occur to me that it was just like, oh, cool stuff happens in New York all the time. Of course, they've got this amazing sculpture in Times Square, but it was really neat. Little would I know that I'd have so much interaction with it eventually. This is the location that we're working to make happen. As you can see, this is a particularly high water day. There's actually about 40 more feet of riverbank on normal pool for this Ohio River. But this shows about how long it is. It's about 3 light poles long. And it would it doesn't show up perfectly because you would actually, we're gonna maintain that entire width of the normal path. And then the exhibit will actually follow the path where it breaks off and then dip a little bit into the riverbank there. What makes this so great is it gets the sculpture up, I think, about as close to you as you can get it to the river, which is one of Charles Gaines's key assets or aspects of the piece, is to keep it close to the water. So you hear that water through it. And then secondly, it's pretty heavy, and it's a big piece. And so by putting it in this location, as you guys know, this is an area where we're already working to shore this riverbank up with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. So it's a space where anything we do to it will be remediating anyways. So it has a lot of value there for us to keep it, and it just allows the rest of the park to be kind of experienced in its normal way. So,
Any reason why you think we couldn't accommodate this?
I mean, we're working through it with them, but at this point, we think this spot will work really well.
And
We had a great site meeting yesterday.
Charles was here. He's sorry that he couldn't join us today. His flight was a little earlier than he anticipated, but he came and saw the site yesterday and was really excited about it. And he spent a lot of time in Smale walking around, and it was really wonderful getting to see this new site because I think it resonates so powerfully with the artwork and will feel so different from how it does in New York.
A few of us did attend last night with him. He's very excited about this, and just the excitement in the room. I think you'll agree with the partners that are involved with this. It sounds like a great opportunity. And do you have an idea of how you will promote this? Who does that, and what are your thoughts on promoting this? Because I think it would bring people from all over the region, all over the country, actually.
We've been talking to ArtsWave about helping us with the strategy about how to promote this in a meaningful way that highlights the partners. We're having this be really a Cincinnati rooted narrative. We also have a PR company that we work with in New York City that has strong national press relations that also really wants to drive that narrative in a meaningful way. And I think it's important that this gets approval, that we also work with tourism to think through what it means for regional tourism and thinking about potential ad buys throughout the region so that people come here and experience this artwork and then stay here and experience everything else that's happening within Cincinnati. And so that's an important part of the strategy as well.
Great.
There's a certain amount of the aspect that is sitting in Smale with the thousands of visitors to Smale daily. And then everyone that drives over the Roebling Bridge, they're going to see this massive and moving piece of artwork, and they're going to be, what is that? I've got to go check that out. I've got to, make some time to go see that. I think that's going to be just the location alone will be a tremendous promotional piece for it. And it'll be a real conversation driver for the community.
Well, if I'm not mistaken, what we need to do today is for a board approve the installation of this artwork on our property. And I think what we'd like to do, incorporate into a motion, also authorizing Jason to go through whatever negotiations and documentation that's required for this agreements with the rest of the partners and everything. If that makes sense. Jason, does that accomplish what you need from us? Okay.
The next step for us will be to work with their design and logistics team on how do we put this heavy on a riverbank, which will be fun, and we'll use our friend Joel's engineering expertise to help guide that. But then we'll also be working through the operational agreement and what that means to us. One thing that Justine didn't point out, but in all of our conversations, Creative Times being sure to continue to note that this is at no cost to the park board, that they will pay for the installation, they'll pay for the cleanup and the operations of it. We'll be there to support, we'll pick up the litter, we'll deal with the extra people that are there, and we'll keep the area as beautiful as we always keep Smale. But that'll be the piece we work through in the operating agreement.
I can add one more thing on the heavy part. I talked to the artist, Mr. Gaines, yesterday a little bit. He said the more natural we can keep that area, the better. So, and looking at that and how that saw cut line, as Jason said, we're gonna follow that out a little bit so that left end of it kind of jets out more towards the river. Just building it up with earth may be sufficient. At very minimally, we'll do one row of the blocks like they just did at California Woods to kind of level that side up, but not really anticipating that they're gonna have to do a whole lot of destructive stuff in that spot to get this to work right. And Mr. Gaines was pretty happy about the layout and adamant about keeping it as naturally as we could, the interface between the river and the piece. So we'll facilitate that in any way we can.
Great. So again, we'll have then before us, I'll be looking for a motion that the park board approve the installation of this artwork on our property and to authorize Jason to execute whatever documentation is necessary for this presentation for that period. So do I have a motion?
So moved.
And is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Justine, thank you so much. It's an exciting project.
Thank you so much. I'm really honored and thank you for your.
Absolutely. Thank you. Jason, would you like to introduce the next?
Excellent. So next up, we have Murray Monroe from THP. We have been working with THP and the Parks Foundation and a lot of folks to get to a spot where we have the next to bring forward the next kind of design for the enhancements to Smale Lot 23. This is the kind of the public event lawn that is right next to the Brady Icon Music Center. It was finished to operable levels several years ago when the Brady Center opened, but it has not kind of received that next level of investment and improvement that everybody has looked forward to. So the park board engaged THP a couple of years ago to work with Sasaki and bring us these plans together. And today we're finally ready to unveil them and start the conversation about what these plans will look like.
Murray, thank you. Welcome.
Well, thank you. First of all, I thank Jason and board for inviting me here to give a design update on phase 2 of the Lot 23 park. It's also, I think, now phase 2 of the Smale expansion. I'm Murray Monroe. I'm the lead architect and project manager for THP. Also here today is Mitchell Holker, who is our project architect for the project. The design team, we can stay on that first slide just for a second. Our design team, THP is the architect and structural engineer for the project, and we're working with 2 landscape architecture firms, Sasaki and the Kleiningers Group. Kolar Design is handling the signage and graphics, and Heapy Engineering is the electrical, lighting, and plumbing project. Probably go through a little background and context. Here's our overall riverfront slide view. Lot 23 is the park. I'll point that out, Jason. Hold on.
Yep, sorry.
See on our.
Go back one.
So it's just north of Mering Way, west of the suspension bridge. More particularly, it's between the Carousel building in the park and the new Brady Music Center. And between Mering Way and the Lot 24 garage, the Lot 24 site, which is just north of this park, which will eventually be housing with some retail. That's the plan. The park is the elevated park. It sits for the main level of the park sits 14 feet above Mering Way. And it's essentially a green roof on the garage that sits below it. Next slide. Now, before even phase 1 was completed, this is about 2018. Here the site is, it's just an asphalt parking lot. Then phase 1 was designed and constructed between 2019 and 2021. Next slide, please. And so this is what it looked like after phase 1, and essentially it's today, what it looks like today. And I thought we'd just kind of walk through a few of the elements. Jason, point them. We have the main performance and event lawn is right in the center. Then on the north, there's the North Promenade. And just north of there is the North Tree Grove. To the east, there's a small planting area that currently is just on grade, and it's a small kind of temporary, it's kind of a placeholder planting area. And as we swing to the south, there's the South Promenade. And just north of there is the South Tree Grove. And as we move down there's the lower Ray Street Stair. It's actually the lower one, yeah. And then we'll we go across Marion right now, there's a wall, and it's a concrete wall, is what we see all today. And that's just the backup wall for the Marion Wall. Then in the what we call the Race Street corridor is on the far west side of the project. And Jason just pointed to the lower Race Street stair, which brings you up to park level. There's the western tree grove. And then you go up the upper Race Street stair, and you end up at the Race Street turnaround. And there's a couple existing planters up there that were built as part of phase one. Second. So phase two of the project, we're essentially adding a number of enhancements to the park that we didn't have funding for during phase one. The budget for phase two is $4.5 million. And I like to think of, sometimes I tell people phase two is a little bit like 6 or 7 smaller individual projects within a big project. And the next slide. And in this slide, the darkened areas are the areas of these elements. Walk through each one. Next slide, please. So here we have highlighted the eastern overlook, which is our eastern, it's going to be a new eastern overlook garden. Next slide, please. Which is basically a big garden planter that will be ringed with granite seating. And it's at a location on the east end of the park where when you sit on the north end of the planter, which is shown here, you can look back to the city. On the east side, you're looking over the carousel building. On the south end of the planter, you've got great views of the suspension bridge and the river and over to Covington. And on the west side of the planter, you can look over into kind of the heart of the Lot 23 park. So then along the promenades, we're going to be adding seat walls, both along the northern promenade, which is the darker line at the top. And it's just kind of an 18-inch high by 18-inch wide granite seat wall. And next slide, please. And in the far right, kind of upper right of this corner of this slide, you can see that seat wall running behind the trees. This also shows the south end of the East Overlook planter in the foreground. And then in the background is the south tree grove seat wall. This is all the brown granite that's typical in Smale Park. With these seat walls, for the first 5 feet or so of those existing planters, the grade will be raised. Basically, the back of the seat wall plantings will be raised, and on the south side, the grade will be raised, and the grass will come up with that, to almost the back of the seat wall. If we can go back to the previous slide for just a second. Along with the south promenade seat wall, you'll see the 3 little bump outs are 3 little semicircular stairs that will allow you to walk from the promenade up into the tree grove, which is approximately 18 inches to 2 feet higher than the promenade elevation. So next slide, please. And then next one. As you go to the far west end of the south promenade, you come to the lower Race Street stairs, and in this location, we're adding a donor wall and a planter. Next slide, please. So right now, the stair is existing to the runoff. So everything past there, planter and the donor wall will be new. And the donor wall will be clad in sandstone and granite, just like the other donor walls in the park. And it will be engraved at the top with the Smale Riverfront Park typical graphics. And then the donor names will appear below that. And you can see the engraving on the wall, which is essentially where those donor names will go. As part of this piece, we're also extending the plaza that's behind the wall up to the wall to create a nice overlook. And from that overlook, you'll be able to look over to the Castellini Esplanade, the rest of Smale Park, to the river, and over to Covington. As part of this area, we're also doing a planter on the west side of the stairs that will complement the one on the east side of the stairs. So you'll have plantings on both sides of the stairs as you ascend into the park. Next slide, please. The Marion Wall. So all along Marion Way, we're going to clad the wall. Next slide, please. And it will be clad in the same sandstone and brown granite that the rest of the park is clad in, similar to over on the east side of the bridge at the Moorline Lawn and where the carousel is. And so we'll no longer have to look at just a blank concrete wall. It will be a nice, beautiful stone wall. Next slide, please. So at the upper level of the Ray Street corridor, and so this level that's highlighted here is about 12 feet above the main lawn level. And there's several pieces here. One is the concrete, we have two concrete planters that are existing. We're going to clad those in brown granite and make them basically seat walls around those planters. Next slide, please. And this is a rendering, a Sasaki rendering that shows those planters clad in granite. Next slide, please. So this is a rendering from kind of the north, a view from the northeast of looking at that whole area. You can see the two larger planters there. Also, another piece of the project is we're going to clad the banding around the upper level. Right now, the coping and the railing are in. The band below that is all you see is a concrete structural beam. So this will all be clad in sandstone. It's 2 feet. Finish that off. So that's what's in the base project budget. So the plan is to bid this fall. If bidding comes in favorably, we also wanted to add a couple add alternates to the project so that if bidding comes in lower than we anticipate, we'll be able to include maybe one of these add alternates in the project also.
I'm sorry, what are we looking at here? What's this building on the corner and what are the ground materials? It looks like a solid surface with parking lot striping in this rendering. And I don't think that's what it is.
No.
But what are we looking at here?
The building at the corner is the elevator shaft
Okay, got it.
roof, and where the other one is.
These are the pergolas
These
that
are
are one of the
pergolas.
alternatives.
So one of the alternatives are steel pergolas.
Oh, I see.
There's two, there's one over in the seating area. And then there's one along this eastern edge.
I see. It's hard to see. Maybe it's
The top of it's.
the perspective
So
here.
that, yeah,
Yeah.
at the
So-
top is the building and the circle on the right is the turnaround off of Elm Street.
Okay, I see.
Yeah, we're kind of looking.
Race
from
Street
north
coming
back
through.
south now. So yeah, so it looks black, it looks dark in this picture, but it would be the same silver color that the other pergolas throughout the park are.
Right.
And it's an element that we feel will help tie this part of the park into the other parts of the park. So that's one of the add alternates. The second add alternate. Next. Is a set of block granite seating. That this is a slide looking from the West Tree Road to the upper Ray Street stair. And to the west of that stair now is just all planter bed. And so one of the add alternates is to put a large block seating right next to the stair. So as you come down the stair, you could pause, sit there, lounge there, look down at the tree grove or over to the east to the rest of the park. And then a third add alternate that we've talked about is paving, adding pavers to an area north of the outdoor stage. Just to make that a little bit more finished area. It's not. And so that will all depend, those items really depend on how the bidding comes back. And whether we have funds for that. The last slide in the deck here is the donor site plan. Let Jason speak to that a bit.
You could zoom in, I think is what we
Yeah, I
have.
think it's not, the
Not
resolution is on here.
We're gonna try that one more time. And maybe zoom it in. Okay, can we open it back up? Can we just close it and open it back up? So this next slide, what it'll do is it'll show all of the various elements of this project that in partner with our friends at the foundation have sold as donor elements. And so there are some naming rights that will go along with that. The foundation's currently, now that we've gotten to this point, foundation's currently working with those donors to get everything locked in, to get the areas where they'll be recognized in front of them so they can approve them. And then the plan is for Jennifer to come back in August to present those specific donors for you guys to approve. But now we were just going to show you where those elements are so that you can see kind of the different pieces of that and how they'll be recognized. In concept, and we'll see the specific spots in a second if our computers work, or maybe not, but we'll definitely get it to you. But in concept, the key elements are on that entry plaza where the turnaround is. Those two, the plaza will be named for a donor. And then it will also be an area to, on the seat walls, granite seat walls, to recognize the Smale Riverfront Park again as another one of the entry points where we always want to recognize the name of the park. That Race Street staircase is also a donor opportunity. And so there'll be a couple of spots as you go up and as you go down where we'll recognize the donor that has sponsored that area. That north seat wall and that north esplanade, that will also have a donor recognition area on it. The eastern overlook, that garden with those really cool seat walls that I noticed in the graphic that those cutouts are designed to allow a wheelchair or a stroller to tuck in, which is very interesting. In concept, I just thought it was artistic, but then I saw in the 3D, it's very accessible, which is wonderful. But that'll be another area that will be a donor naming rights opportunity. And then the southern promenade or southern esplanade will also be an area that could be done, that will be donor recognized. In addition, the event lawn has a donor, and then the that middle area, that Race Street tree lawn area where there's a couple of tree grove area, there's a donor for that as well. So hopefully we get to see that, although we might have maxed out our RAM or ROM. I always forget which is which. But hopefully it'll come up. But if nothing else, we'll be able to get it to you guys so you guys can see it and have a chance to kind of digest it before actually approving the specific names come August. So while we wait for that, let's go ahead and bring up the budget estimate if that part of the computer will work. Which maybe not, maybe we've broken this entire browser.
Tia, opening in actual software, not the browser.
Yeah.
Well,
So this may be more of a question for the foundation or maybe
Mhm.
Jason. So we don't have pricing in yet, but I presume we've got conceptual pricing.
which you have a copy in front of you,
Okay,
which we're gonna go through next.
okay, good.
So, when Murray first came back to us with the total cost for this, it was about 5.5 million. And so we had already talked through kind of what were some ad alternatives. That was to do the kind of whole project. It was as it was conceived of several years ago when we started this down this path. But we had a couple of ad alternatives that we've moved out and a couple of things we've changed in order to bring this into budget at 4.5 million. And so as you can see, as we go through each one of these, you can see how much each piece of this costs, right? From the upper level planters and that cladding to the cladding that's right below the floor and kind of wraps around that entire deck. The Race Street bottom bench, which even if we don't do those seat walls, which is one of the alternatives, that bottom bench, currently, we used a piece of like extra granite or extra cladding
Yeah, we use a piece of extra coping,
coping.
phase one.
So it's not designed to be a seat wall, so it's a little high and awkward, so I'll have to replace that. Sorry. Make sure everybody's got the.
Sorry, I'm paper shuffling.
It was not part of, what's that? You have it right there.
Yeah.
No? Here, I got an extra. It doesn't even matter.
I got some extra.
There we go. So. Again, we've got the upper level planters, the cladding there. We've got, just moving down the list, we've got the cladding that goes around right below the upper level deck. We've got the new seat wall that will need to go under the new seat bench that will go on top of the Ray Street planters. We have the north planter and tree grove, the eastern overlook, which is the south promenade wall, is obviously one of the longest pieces. The southwest planter, that'll be the planter to the Marion Street level that will be immediately west of the steps. The donor wall and planter, which will be immediately east of the steps, and then Marion Way and all the cladding along there, which will really tie the whole park together as you go along Marion Way. The other two pieces to note is, as you can see, that only comes to 3.3 million, but we've then got the construction contingency and the owner design contingency, which is pretty high right now. I was talking to Joel yesterday. Those are areas that could even be a little bit lower, but we've got a pretty high contingency in there for right now. And then, of course, just the regular pieces that come with having a general contractor to do this, to bring us into that $4.5 million level. And then you can see the ad alternatives below, depending on what funding are available and how the plans come back in. In conversations with our team, we feel like the kind of most important piece, if we were to start to add alternatives back in, is that the stage currently, as you know, has been shifted and kind of sits in that planter in order to accommodate some sound effects and things like that on our neighbors in Covington. And so it currently looks kind of unfinished, like the stage was pushed or like we moved it for some reason. And so one of the things that we could do is to pave that west end of the north planter and to put pavers in there so it looks finished, and to have that kind of have a real finished condition. After that, those two pergolas on the top level, we'll have those in the bid package as two different pergolas so that we know what each one costs and we can add one again if we can, or both if funds are available. And then the last one is that kind of those block seating in that middle Ray Street stairs planter, which I think would be beautiful, but currently that planter looks beautiful and is well taken care of by Lou's team at the Smale team, and it looks great. And so that's an easy save there. But these will all be things that we get to decide kind of as we move through this process. As Murray outlined, my hope is that you guys have now seen these beautiful drawings in this presentation. We'll make sure we get a copy of Murray's presentation to you. You can then take the month to kind of consider it, to look at it, to ask any questions you have, make any suggestions you have, or any kind of inquiries. And then if it's the board's will, we then vote on it at the July meeting to move to construction documents. So this is currently at the I think it's the schematic drawings level, right? The design drawings level. I'm still learning, but the design drawing level. And then the vote in July would be to authorize Murray to go to the construction documents, which are what we need for a bid. That's all funded with the contract we currently have with them. So all that funding is already set aside. With help of the foundation, they provided $500,000 several years ago. And then the board authorized $200,000 for that design element. Murray's contract's about $335,000. So that would take us to construction documents, at which point we can start the bidding process. We'll be talking to purchasing over the summer to find out what the best way to bid this out is. We've got a couple different pathways before us. We'll obviously want to do the one that is most advantageous price rise, since we're right at that $4.5 million level. If you vote to move the construction document or to move the construction documents in July, take them about 2 months to get those developed, so we could proceed like an October-ish bid time. That bidding process takes 2 to 3 months, and so we could be awarding the contract by the end of this year, within construction set to take place over 2024. At this point, what we do know is that the longest lead time is this stone, and that could take upwards of 25 to 30 to maybe even 50 months.
Grant's been in the last 2 years, the lead time's been expanding. So for cladding, things that are as thin as 2 inches, it's only maybe 12 to 14 weeks. The cubic stuff like the benches is now was running 30 weeks, and now we've heard it could be even higher than that.
Wow.
Yeah, it's good. Now, hopefully, at some point, it should move back.
Theoretically.
Theoretically. But their Slam Cold Spring is the primary granite supplier for everything that's been in the park, the granite and their Slam.
So in addition, just to talk about the sources of funding. So the foundation has raised about $3 million towards this project through many generous donors. And then we have 1.5 million that was awarded in the 2022 budget. So last year about this time, as council just voted on the budget yesterday. And then we have whatever dollars remain in that design budget. So like I said, the kitty is about $700,000. And then we've got the contract with THP to get us through construction documents. And then give or take any overruns, there's a little bit of funding left there, which we could also then consider using for some of these alternatives, or depending on how the bid package comes in. So
the 3 million that the foundation has raised, that's in addition to the 500 that was raised for design and. place?
correct. Yeah.
That's amazing. Thank you.
I'd say the most generous best.
Big time. Thank you.
So that gets us to kind of the funding to do this. I think the drawings came together. I was certainly, when I read the first line of Murray's email that said 5.5 million, I was quite worried, but Murray laid out a very clear and concise way to get us down to 4.5. And THP has just been so great to work with on this. They've turned around some changes rather quickly and helped us kind of work through where the position of all this has been. And it's just been a real pleasure to work with them. So.
Great.
I think that we don't need to address this today, but I would like to talk about when we get to the voting space. I'd like your perspective on what's next with the riverfront. Meaning we've been working here and investing a lot of resources the foundation has, of course, and time. And I just want to get some perspective on is this our final project? And what comes next? We've got a lot of other needs and parks. And we want to make sure that we've got the people available to work on them too.
So just in the short term, just to the next piece is that River's Edge, which is what we're working on with the Army Corps of Engineers. Got a little bit of money set aside for that, about $1.25 million that we received in October from the City Council. And we're working with the Army Corps of Engineers on that decision document. That's a 12 to 18 month process. We had our second monthly call just yesterday, and that's moving along kind of at their pre-prescribed pace. And there's some federal funding that is set aside for that as well. So that'll probably be our next focus on the riverfront. So it continues, but
it'll always be there.
Yeah, it is our signature park. It's where our artists from New York want to come and show off their works, right?
It's the most
Make a great park and everyone wants to play in it.
And along that with the Corps of Engineers, have we moved forward at all? I know we moved to and agreed with a memorandum of understanding that costs incurred to date would go towards our match under that $30 million project that is out there. Has that gone anywhere as far as assuring that what we've already put in will make that match?
Part of this design process will be working through that accounting and getting that approved and signed off on by their accountants and their financial team.
Okay.
The federal government, is the bigger dog in this discussion. But I've made it clear from the beginning that while we have a little bit of funding that we can use as the match for this, that match as part of that we've already completed in that MOU was conceived and agreed to because it wasn't the intention of the city or the park board to put an additional $15 million into that final solution. And that we really need to be looking at a solution that mostly relies on the federal match to what we've already invested in. So there'll be a point at which, as we design it and as we do that accounting, we've got about $35 million worth of receipts for those parking garages and that other flood mitigation in this larger project. And so hopefully that should be more than enough to account for 15 million, but we will, that'll be a negotiated process as we go. But I've made it clear that it's not, if that doesn't get accounted for, that will be a much smaller project. So everybody's aware of that as we move through that.
Any more questions for Murray while you're here? Clear. Okay, thank you very much. Yeah. Okay, we will move then to Joel, your update on planning and design.
We got an easy one this time.
Commissioners, I'm gonna keep mine short and sweet since you had some presentations, but feel free to ask questions if you have any. I have one action item this month. We can certainly do that one first. This is bringing back to your attention Alms Alt water mains. As we talked about last month, purchasing advised us to strike the Alms water main portion of that from this project as it's not an emergency. We wanted to move forward with an emergency quote, so we did that. Had our responsive contractor bring that back to our attention and update his quote so that it didn't involve that. And that's what I'm bringing forward to you for consideration this morning. Queen City Mechanical was our only responsible bidder. They presented a price of $220,450 to do the French and alt water mains. No contingency in that, so we added, as we typically do, a 10% contingency, just given the terrain and some potential problems with fittings and things that we don't know, just because it's a pretty intense project. We're asking the board to approve $242,500 today. You have already allotted $250,000 of the board approved money under line item 232000. I'm asking for your approval today for $242,500. Do you have any questions on this or want to go through the plans at all? Talk about what's involved with these? I'm certainly happy to revisit that if you wish.
From my understanding, Joel, we had approved a bigger amount because we had, so you're under very being very cautious here. You're asking us to reapprove the other.
Well, I told you we would bring that back to you once we had accurate quotes. The 250 was a rough order of magnitude estimate.
Gotcha.
And the other reason is I want to be transparent in that this doesn't include the Alms water main that's going to fix the fountain, which was included in that original $250,000 ask that we had. We're going to quote that separately. We anticipate just from the difference in quotes, that's going to be in the $20,000 to $25,000 range.
Okay.
So we can do that under a standard. We're bringing it back before the board so that I'm not piecing out projects to get under a threshold.
Gotcha.
That's essentially why I'm asking for it.
So and let's take that up while we've got Joel here. Any questions concerning that approval for the water mains? If not, do I have a motion to approve his request?
So moved.
And second? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Thank you, Joel.
Thank you, commissioners. I'm only going to highlight 3 projects today, but please feel free to ask if you have questions on any of the rest of them. One staff update first. As I mentioned last month, I've reviewed 15 applications for engineers now, which is very, very encouraging to have some great applicants. We have 4 awesome ones that we've narrowed down. I'm working with Derek and his team to schedule interviews for that and put together that interview panel. So we anticipate doing that throughout June and July to bring another person on board, which will really help us round out the team, get some more engineering, stormwater things moving faster than they are even right now. So thank you for that allotment and budget to have that. And we're happy to interview these people and get the team up to full speed. Current construction projects, I just want to highlight one issue with the Alms Park sanitary sewer. In the middle of construction, essentially, MSD has come to us and essentially recategorized this from services to a quasi main. It is code. It's a little bit different than how it was permitted, but essentially MSD is requiring us via the state to add a manhole upstream of the initial runs and reconfigure how we add these services in from these buildings instead of treating both of them like individual services as they were quote unquote grandfathered in 50 years ago when they were put in. So ultimately, we're just waiting on approval from the state for this modification. We're working with MSD to do that. We anticipate having to add one structure to this project and reconfigure very minor how those mains tie into that structure. It won't tie exactly into that. It'll tie in downstream, just like a house is supposed to tie into a main. That's really the biggest issue, but I wanted to bring it before you because it's kind of paused construction for a couple weeks as we figure this out with MSD. We already have a contingency on the project, which I feel will probably cover the difference in costs at absolute most, but wanted to let you know that's why that one's paused. Just bringing that to your attention. If anyone is asking why that is not not up and running yet. Third, just to update on Lytle Park renovation, lots of stuff going on this month. The fountain is almost done. Tia, if you want to jump to the pictures, just to show them a couple cool things that's happening right now. Keep going. Right there, that is essentially about a week ago, that picture was taken. The formed piece in the center is poured. It looks immaculate. This is gonna turn out.
That'd be gorgeous.
Isn't that beautiful?
I can't find a problem with it. So they're doing a great job on the fountain, working with Bruce and their team every single day to button up some of the plumbing and minutia of how we put in cutoffs and things like that. So Lytle is going pretty well. Lots of concrete work this month. They're actually going to move the job trailer. If you see that in the next few days, because there's a piece, the final piece of stormwater needs to be integrated, and that's where that is. So if you see things moving around, everything's fine. We're just accommodating the rest of the underground utilities, which should be finished up this month. We anticipate final electrical things and lighting pole fixtures, all of that minor underground utility, the irrigation stuff, and secondary utilities going in here shortly. And then they'll essentially start skinning it out, putting concrete, finishing all the walks, and those kind of things will happen over the next couple months here. So Lytle is going pretty well.
Does the tree survive the spring drought?
Yes, ma'am, it's looking really well. We talked about it. We talk about it in every meeting and how they're upkeeping it. It's on an irrigation drip, as you know, so it's getting plenty of water, and they're doing it as prescribed. But Garrett has been checking on it as well, along with Chris McGee. They're very adamant about keeping up with that. So
I feel like the tree should have a name.
It's supposed to have a plaque, so we have agreed legally to put a plaque by it, but I don't know that we have to name it. Joel, are we still on board or online for a fall opening?
absolutely. The only issue that may not be complete is a quality issue. Having a problem finding a couple of the trees that have been prescribed by Human Nature, beautiful trees, but very aesthetically precise. We'll put it that way. They have to be the right color. We're working with our folks and their team already to identify the best ones. Because of the drought and because at certain times of the year, those trees are pulled out of the ground to kind of sit on the ground in anticipation of being moved to a project. Our team is advising us that some of those may not be the best quality trees, and to actually dig the trees out and get a better caliber, larger tree if we wait a couple months to dig those out. Essentially, all that being said, we're waiting on better trees potentially, but those would still go in very early November. So still on schedule. Everything would be open, but there may be 4 or 5 trees that we're waiting on better quality for. So
After this long, we can wait for another month. That's great. Thank you.
playground has been marked out. If you would like to see, they're walking down there, walking through the job site, you can see where the playground's going to go. It's vastly expanded from what it was before, and we think it's going to be a great asset to the city. We're focused on families traveling in that business district, a little bit of exercise equipment, stuff for kiddos to play on too. So
Great.
I hope it's a great revitalization and everything's going pretty well.
Super.
Last one, I just want to give you an update on, because it's a staff specific and very urgent project, is Ludlow. Chris and I went to the meeting on Tuesday with Megan Construction, who's running that project, and just want to give them a verbal shout out here. The organization that they're providing for this project and oversight is much appreciated. They're doing a fantastic job, keeping us informed and on schedule, bringing attention to problems very quickly so that Chris and I can address those. Thank you to Obi and his team for doing a great job. They're on schedule. HVAC is going in right now, all new stuff. We're talking through some structural changes, very minor, to get HVAC units in the ceiling, checking all that stuff out. The foam insulation has been completed underneath the ceiling, and roofing is going to start in the next couple of weeks. So big stuff moving, but even that one is very much on schedule and going well. Abatement will be finished in the next couple of weeks as well. Asbestos in the basement, as we discussed previously, all of that is being remediated properly and concealed. Gene is working with us, and IT, we're doing that piece in-house to save some money, as you all are aware. We pulled that out of the bid, and that was something that ETS needs to deal with anyway. So we're coordinating with them while we have the ceiling open, so they can get in and fix any lines without having to drag stuff through new drywall or underneath ceilings, so that our folks can get in there and do that as well. All that will happen in the next month. Ludlow is going pretty well. Good. Commissioners, that is all the updates I had for you. The are outside of the normal thing. Do you have any questions on anything else that I presented in my report? Or anything else for that matter?
So perfect. I want to piggyback, Joel, if you want to sit down or great. So yeah, as you can see, just as always, Joel, a million updates on a lot of awesome stuff going on. I want to provide a brief update on a project that we've been talking about for a couple of years now, and that is the Department of Natural Resources Annex at Deal Road. So that was a project that when currently the Department of Natural Resources and our Urban Forestry Division are housed at our Reading Road Operations Center. That center is being sold to the federal government as part of the new thanks, Seth.
Thanks, guys.
As part of our as part of the new NIOSH facility there, huge economic development benefit for the city to get those jobs here. And then we had to relocate our Department of Natural Resources. So the original plan was to split them into the building at Ludlow that Joel just updated us on and the annex at Deal Road. When I first started this job back in September, I was told that of the 2.1 million that we sold that for, we would use some for design and we would use about $800,000 to $500,000 on each of those facilities. As you know, the headquarters for the Department of Natural Resources at Ludlow is going to cost us about $1.8 to $1.9 million once we do the outside elements. Some of them are underway. We still have to bid. We're bidding out the fence piece and the garage piece or the storage garage shed piece back there. So we designed the facility at Deal Road where we were also going to locate our biochar operation. And we got those construction documents back or that estimate back last week or 2 weeks ago. And it came in at 3.8 million for all of the site conditions and for the road and to get the water there and the power there and everything. So that
Did not include biocharges.
did not include biochar, correct?
That biochar goes in or the equipment.
Correct. That was just to get the annex.
Annex.
So it turns out that it's very expensive to start a whole new facility and create all of the infrastructure there. You know, that is very long, as you've seen the maps, it's a very long road and to get the utility hookups we need and the proper electricity and everything. So even with a ton of value engineering and getting rid of a ton of the nice to haves, but not the have to haves, that still would have been a several $1 million project, which just doesn't fit for the scope of what we're going to do. So Joel and his team, as they're like to want to do, instantly pivoted and came up with what I think of is even a much better idea, which is that we already were looking at where can we put the green space team and the land management team in the interim, because we knew Deal Road wasn't going to be ready by January 1. We have to be out of the operations center on Reading Road. We were planning to put the green space team at Warder Nursery. Warder Nursery is a nursery that Cincinnati Parks has owned for forever. And it produces about 80% or so of the flowers that we use for Crone Conservatory for all of the various shows, but it is underutilized. And one of the first things I heard is that, you know, we have lots of green space out there that or greenhouse space out there that we're just not using. This could be a much bigger and more robust production facility. So the plan was always to put the green space team out there temporarily for the next year or so while Deal Road was there. But we quickly pivoted and realized that for the amount of indoor space they need, we could very easily get a very, very fancy construction trailer and put that there and then repurpose some of the space there to be some of their storage area. Because what they mostly need is a place to keep all of their plants and all of their flower pots, all of their elements that they put into the various flower pots and beds and green spaces throughout the city. So we've pivoted to put them there, not just short term, but potentially long term, and reactivate a whole area of that facility that hasn't been used in a long time. In addition, there are some older buildings there that one of them is like a horse carriage kind of stable. It's really neat. You go down in the basement and you can see these old sinks that they used to like take care of the horses with. But it currently just stores a lot of the former installations at Crone, a lot of the former artwork, a lot of the former like apparatus and stuff that would go into these amazing shows. And it's neat to take the staff through there because they'll be like, oh, I remember we put this one in there. Oh, I remember that was like 10 years ago. I helped hang that. That took forever to hang. How do we even do that? But we quickly pivoted to be like, wait a second, we could repurpose one of these to be the biochar facility. And there's already a road that goes down there that would facilitate the trucks dropping off the wood chips or picking up the biochar to take it out and to sell it or to reuse it. And so we've currently pivoted and we're kind of in a period of transition where we're starting to look at, could we, instead of investing in a whole new site for several $1 million, could we take this old site, reuse and adapt this space into a new and bustling area? Separately, Jenny Mobley, who is on a well-deserved vacation today. She wishes she could be with us. She might be listening in. Hi, Jenny. Although she can't be listening, in. We can't even broadcast. So this is all an effort to get Jenny to actually relax on her vacation. Zoom was conspiring with us to give Jenny some time off. Anyways, but Jenny had separately been working on a plan to kind of supercharge our production at Warder. And we've had several conversations with the staff about what could that look like. Could we be growing flowers that the green space team uses for all of the various plantings throughout the community? Could we be growing flowers that are used at this building and at other spaces? And could we even increase the amount of flowers and the production level for Crone? And then you factor in along with that, the fact that currently we buy all of the trees that we plant. We plant, and Crystal's not here anymore, but we plant, I believe, about 1,500 street trees a year. And then another 500 to 1,000 trees in other areas of parks, whether that is in our forests or in other areas, we plant these other trees. We buy all of those trees from third-party vendors. Beyond that, we have a need for more native trees. As we take out these invasive species and we remove the honeysuckle and the other stuff that has drowned out what the natural forest should look like, it has drowned out this kind of understory of baby trees and teenager trees and young adult trees that should be kind of in that cycle to take over and to keep our forests full. And so there's a huge potential at Warder to even potentially get into the business of growing trees. That will take several years to get going and get up and running, but this opportunity to eventually be, you know, as I like to talk about, we want to control our destiny, right? I talked about that when you guys interviewed me. Like, I believe in controlling our destiny, being in charge of kind of shaping our future, not being reliant upon others. We can get into the business of growing those trees, both for our right of way and our street trees in the urban forestry program, but also to help repopulate these forests that have been overtaken by invasive species, and help to find those native species, grow and cultivate those. I think it's a huge opportunity. So we're in the very early days of that shift, but it is an important shift because we've been talking about Deal Road for a long time. The drawings look great. And I was excited to build kind of a whole new facility, but I know I am, and I think a lot of the team is really excited to kind of pivot. And I'm really proud of the team and how quickly they pivoted and how much they it's hard to let go of something you spend a lot of time designing, but we've pivoted to kind of this different plan, and a plan that we think makes a lot of sense. And so over the next couple of months, you're going to be hearing us put the meat on the bones and start to figure out what this plan looks like and how it could work. And I'd love to take anybody that wants to out to Warder and check it out, because it's fun to walk around there. It was a WPA building built in the 30s and 40s. And it just has a ton of potential. And so it's a kind of, Warder is on the Branstetter report as things that we need to take care of over the next several years. And so we're basically advancing that and trying to merge all of these kind of projects together. So I don't have a ton of details now other than what I just laid out, but that's kind of the pivot we've made. And we're now really exploring that and kind of looking into what the next steps are for that. And it's kind of exciting for us. So
A ton of details.
Yeah, it's a lot. Jason, Deal Road, I mean, we took that site for granted as being vetted and the right location to accommodate biochar and other operations out there. How far along are you with determining whether Warder is right? What are the walls we can hit here? Hang on, I got a couple more questions and then I'll get it back over. And then just thinking about street trees, number one, I like your thinking on native species. I'd really like for you all to consider a policy that would only have us planting native species in parks or in certain areas of parks. That's number two. And then when you think about bringing stuff in-house, sometimes it makes sense to do that and sometimes it doesn't. So I just say, before we get behind a plan that has us producing all of our own trees, or a large majority of them, an analysis that tells us that that's the right solution. Because that comes, we need some resources to do that. We can't just do that, and we need people and we need other things, and will make a lot of sense.
absolutely.
So I know that's to come.
Yep. So first up, how deep are we into exploring Warder? About 2 weeks, I'd say. I think it was about 2 weeks ago, 2 Thursdays ago, where we first got the news that it was going to be $3.8 million at Deal, which is just kind of a stunning number to come back, and where those resources come from.
DOA.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And so, we had a long meeting where we had to kind of go through the 7 stages of grief. to get to, all right, this is DOA. And not just, you kind of know it in your gut, but you got to like kind of get there. And by the end of the meeting, we had kind of all really embraced water. And so we went out the following Tuesday, which was like last week, and did kind of a site visit with 4 or 5 people to kind of look around and kind of really dig into it. And we've since been kind of moving full speed ahead at looking into that. So I know Joel has his team looking at talking to Waterworks to make sure we have enough water there to water the green space plants, because they need about 10,000 square feet of just like plant storage space. Chick was recently at the Reading Road Operations Center and saw how many plants are there. And that's after most of the spring plantings are done. That's not even a busy time. So we want to make sure the water's right. The other piece is we're going to need 3-phase power, which, as many of you know, is just like a higher level of power that will require kind of a special connection from Duke. That was one of the more expensive pieces of the Deal Road piece, because you had to go several thousand feet to get that there. We won't have to go quite as far at Warder. So Joel's team's investigating that right now too, and looking at how we get that in there. And then we're just starting to look at the buildings. So those old WPA buildings that are in the back that we're thinking about potentially putting biochar in, they have asbestos roofs. So we're either going to need to encapsulate that in some way that makes it safe, or we're going to have to remove that roof and put a new roof on it. Or potentially we need to look at potentially demolishing one of the buildings. I mean, they're just old kind of concrete block buildings, and putting up maybe like a pole barn, kind of just like a metal building. I mean, the needs for the biochar facility are pretty simple, especially because one of the great things about moving to Warder is there are already bathrooms there, which was one of the bigger and more expensive pieces of starting the Deal Road building, was that you had to bring in kind of all of this base needed by code and needed by just being good employers. You know, you gotta have a bathroom for your employees. You can't just give them a porta potty. And so some of that infrastructure already exists there. There's already water lines there. We might have to improve the water lines, we might have to widen them, but they're already there. And so there's a lot of that infrastructure that's already there, but we're proceeding down it as quickly as we can. We'd always kind of considered that as the temporary home for green space. So some of that planning was already in the works. And the meeting we had with the green space team, where they started to kind of envision like what they could do and how they could take care of it. And as you hear lots from me at these meetings, Ann Ullman, the head of our green space team, was just like all in and was just like, I got this. And she was like, wait till you start seeing what I like, because the other great thing about there is these are some of our most ninja florists, right? We got a lot of ninja florists throughout our team, but they're going to really make that space look amazing. And I was like, I can't wait to see it. And she's like, just wait. So we were already kind of proceeding down that temporary piece to get them out there. Now we're looking at maybe investing a little bit more into that temporary piece. And when I say a little bit more, I think the fanciest construction trailer we could buy, well, maybe not the fanciest, but a very, very nice construction trailer is more like $75,000 to $100,000, which certainly in comparison to a $3.8 million building is a different level of investment. And so we're looking at maybe, instead of just getting them like a construction trailer that would get them through a summer, we're looking at maybe something that could be semi-permanent. And so those are the kind of decisions we're making, but we always were looking at that as a site for at least the temporary. And then there's also a building that currently houses our carpenter shop and a garage underneath that does storage. And so those are areas where we can store their mowers, their trimmers, their other like big equipment out there. So it's coming together quicker than we thought. But we're at the very early days of a pivot, but the team's exciting and they're really embracing it.
Right.
So to the second question,
Can I add one of the first hurdles? The only thing about moving biochar here, and it's not even a hurdle yet, is the fact that it's Springfield Township instead of the city of Cincinnati. So that in and of itself is a different level of, we have to go present essentially the air permitting and stuff for biochar. While we don't imagine any emissions, we already have data on that kind of stuff. We just got to make sure that it's all good, and that's a different level of authority, what we typically have ourselves in the city. So that's, as you asked for, Commissioner, the hangups, that's the one I'm concerned about.
What about the location, the time involved and the cost involved with hauling? Is there any difference between that and Deal Road?
Probably not.
neither one of them are super central, Deal Road was like extreme northwest of the city of Cincinnati. And this is, while it is in Springfield Township, it kind of is at the very top. It's off of North Bend Road, kind of up near East College Hill, or the eastern side of College Hill, kind of off of Winton Road, where Winton hits North Bend. And so, I think it's 6 of one, half dozen the other. Neither of them are like a perfect spot for it, but you know, a perfect spot for it would be dead in the center of the city, which isn't necessarily where we put biochar and all this operations center either. So I think they're kind of equal from that standpoint.
To your point, Commissioner, there was a lot of talk apparently at the beginning when they ruled out Warder as a home, when they were talking about Deal, or when you all were talking about Deal, about the access coming into Warder as being a deterrent. That time, I think a lot of talk was about full-size semis having to come back there and all that. We know at this point that that's not the case and that most of these deliveries are made with fairly small vehicles. We've been out there several times, as Jason said in the past couple of weeks. We don't feel like that's going to be much of a detriment to utilizing that site as was initially thought. There's also a couple of other ways to access the site. Some of them are currently in production. In fact, Springfield Township's putting in a nature center adjacent to this. So there's accesses there that aren't, you know, evident right now, that we could partner with them and gain essentially another access to the site to even give redundant exit egress. So a lot of good positive things are happening out there that make it seem like it's going to be a pretty good selection. But as you said, nothing is 100% vetted yet.
Hamilton County handle their permitting, or does the township have its own?
Do not know that yet. I will find out.
And
You'll have some work to do on that.
Yes, we do.
Correct.
some noise issue too. I don't know how loud biochar is, but you know, it is closer to a lot more real.
The biochar itself is not loud. Correct. Biochar itself is not loud. And the grinder, which will be used to make the wood chips, that is louder, but it will be in the back corner. And so it'll be several hundred yards from the closest house.
Okay.
So we don't anticipate there being a ton of noise from that standpoint. And the building, all the greenhouses are between where that will be and where the houses are. So, but again, that's things we will work through, but we don't anticipate that being a huge detriment.
Indoors, correct?
Correct. The biochar can technically be outdoors, but as with all things, you'd like to keep the weather off of it, and from just a purely preventative maintenance
Well,
standpoint.
the reason I ask is there a way to like find a way to create space to where, like, if there is loud noise, you said
Mhm.
the machine kind of like helps it
Mhm.
compress that in.
Yeah, I mean, those will be all the considerations we take as we move forward with making sure we, you know, as I talk about a lot, we're not doing biochar for 1 year. We're doing it for the next 20 years,
Yeah.
right? This isn't to plant trees next year. This is to plant trees in 20 years and to plant trees every year that will be exponentially better for our tree canopy and our urban forest in general. So. To the second question, though, you had about taking production back in-house. Those are absolutely part of the pieces that we're putting together as we look into this. You know, what are the costs that are there? You know, what does that look like? And that's part of the piece that Jenny was working on. We weren't necessarily ready to present that anyways, other than I wanted to just bring it up because we were already exploring how to increase production at Warder. Whether that is a full-fledged, we're growing trees, giant production facility, or whether that's just wringing the most out of these 5 greenhouses we already have and making sure that we are using it in the most efficient way. And all of that will come with kind of thinking through what are the costs, what are the needs, how do we make that happen?
Just want to say thanks to Dayton Metro Parks to that point. Garrett and the P&D team got to go up and visit with them about a week ago. They showed us around their seed facility when they had the tornadoes a couple of years ago. I know Jason's, that's near and dear to his heart being from Dayton. They said they were up to production of like 120,000 trees a year to replenish all that stuff that was lost, and they were giving them away. They showed us their facilities. What is it? Who's the media conglomerate in Dayton? That's who it's Cox. The Cox. That is where they do their native species. Right now they do about 1,200 trees a year, and they do it with 90% volunteer folks. There were essentially 2 to 3 people that oversaw that program. The rest of it was freezer space and having the right stuff, of which Warder can. We have facilities here that dwarf what they have essentially for very small issues. So I think it's a
What was there as far as?
the size of this room is their seed nursery, essentially. Most of what they did was volunteerism. They have a gentleman, Joe, I forget his last name. Very awesome. He was in charge of that facility, showed us the whole thing and how it was run, what they did and what the need was there. They're down to, like I said, about 1,200 because that replenishes what they use in their street tree program right now. But from what Garrett and our team saw, there's nothing that we can't replicate here on any scale that we wish to do so. Little additional staff.
Yeah, I was gonna ask that too. I think that'd be a great like program, like youth or something, to kind of get them
Yeah.
to that. I don't know, that's my brain just I think it's a wonderful opportunity. Again, just make sure you go about the right way.
I will mention this too. I say that it was very little full-time staff, but they were adamant telling us that they had several volunteers and they utilized that space often. There was a lot of educational signage that they did in there to kind of even let the volunteers come in and almost do it automatically with almost no oversight. So had a lot of volunteer hours doing that stuff, but at the same time, very minimal permanent staff oversight from what we saw.
Great.
Didn't mean to interrupt, Jason.
Nope, I mean, excellent points. I was very disappointed I couldn't go on that trip.
It was awesome.
They made me do hard work here. I forget what it was, but not hard work like what our team actually does, planting but like meetings and stuff. Anyway,
Happy to collaborate with those folks. They're doing some awesome stuff on wetlands. Appreciate them showing us around.
Great. Any other questions for Jason or for Joel? I appreciate the update on Deal Road. I think your solution sounds like a very genius and obviously water has always been that asset that we need to decide either we're going to have it or we're not going to have it. And so I think this might be the right resolution for that. Okay. Thank you, Joel.
Thank you, Joel.
Good job.
Regrets again for early departure here.
Molly, safe trip.
Thank you. Maybe I'll get out to Governor's Island.
Yeah, I was thinking about that when she was saying that.
I don't know what it takes to get out there, but I'm gonna check it.
Uber.
Call Justine. She'll hook you up.
yeah,
Yes,
They'll come pick.
yeah.
I can make that connection if you want.
I don't know if I'm gonna find that.
Text me is what I'm saying. I can always do it on the fly.
Bye.
Great.
Thanks.
Thank you, Molly.
Have a safe.
Okay, Derek, I think you're up. Good morning. It's better.
Oh, yes, every week. Feel free to interrupt me while I'll kind of go through it relatively quickly. I'll just talk about the full-time positions that we're working on. 16, there is an update for the grant writer. We have the post ready. Unfortunately, and to the classification that we're using, there was some information that Central HR left off. And we have to wait for them to get approval of the new classification that will allow for us to reach a broader group of applicants, and that doesn't go until July 7th next month.
That'll be on the special agenda meeting
Correct for the,
for the council.
no. So council doesn't have to approve it. This is just to
Service,
get it through the Civil Service Commission.
Okay.
because it's already
One of the many steps.
but we are ready. We have the information approved and everything.
Great.
Just that lag, and I apologize. Are interviewing for the audio visual position that is our waterfront and Lou's team. Actually, right after this, I'll be interviewing the first candidate. Administrative technician, we just onboarded, we have 2 accepted offers, one in my team, one in Chrome. I think last meeting I told you guys we had some offers out. They are approved. My person will be starting at the end of July because the department has told them a little longer, but as we work that out, they're going to be training her in a lot of the areas that have been lagging in regard to safety and being our registrar with trainings.
Great.
We're lucky to have that. And then Chrome, we have a young lady named Wayne Fitzwater. She's coming from the police department. She was there for 15 years. Looking into something new. She wants to be around some flowers. It's awesome. We're lucky for the candidates that we are getting. I think even Sherry, she's already been hugely impactful. I have my largest group of part-timers this pay period of 20 boarded part-timers. And that's simply because she's assisted me with just doing all the paperwork and meeting with them and getting them. I really foresee us being a lot more productive going into next year as they get their trainings and they get updated on union contracts and service rules and administrative regulations, et cetera. We have a service crew leader, and that test is under development. That's for the West District. We are interviewing for the maintenance crew leader position. The supervisor recreation maintenance is still on hold. That is a conversation that we're having with Jason and Jenny ongoing. Tree maintenance crew leader. The lead arborist was actually approved by city council, what was that? Yesterday. So we should be, once that's approved by civil service, the actual classification and it's to the TO, we'll be able to fill that. The only lag there is for the arborist 1 and arborist 2, which are those positions that are kind of training up under that lead arborist. Crystal's not here, but she can provide a little bit more information, but once those are approved by the union, that'll go to council. So that may be later this year. I have entered requisitions for the tree workers positions while we wait for those so that we have some bodies in there. Hopefully we can get some. Historically, we've had issues getting people into those roles, and that's why the arborist positions were created. Because there's a lot of certifications that are required, and it's really hard to find somebody on the outside that has a CDL, the arborist certifications and all that. So the arborist 1 and 2 kind of trains you up step by step to have all those certifications. And it's critical for that team right now. Truck driver, test is under development, electrician is actually posted. It'll be posted for 2 weeks. Supervising engineer, we're interviewing for it. It's going to be underfilled. Storekeeper is on hold right now, so that's a little bit different from the memo. We're just discussing how we're going to utilize that position department wide, and we'll have more information for you guys next board meeting. And we have 2 co-op interns for the audio team, Waterfront. And these guys will have a lot of audio experience and they'll help with all those events that they're having. We have some open requisitions, 2 administrative specialists, service crew leader for each district, an electrician for facilities. Sorry, that's approved now. It was approved today and I posted it today, so that's how fast we're moving. It was approved yesterday and I posted today. Parks Recreation Maintenance crew leader. The current employee is transferring out. He got a promotion opportunity in risk management. So we took one of their employees in admin tech and now they're taking one of ours. Which just happens. The 2 tree maintenance workers that I spoke to previously, Parks Recreation Maintenance crew leader and the 2 co-op interns, which are now approved. So this memo was done a little bit before all that happened. I am entering another requisition for carpenter. That guy, just through attrition, he's not with us anymore. And I think as we build capacity and filling positions on paperwork, I'll be able to get a little bit of the lead in entering these requisitions as these people transition out. If you look at the numbers for part-time positions, you'll see the total is 714 compared to the applicants, compared to the numbers from last year. And that is an 85% increase. And so that's good. I guess that's why we have 20 applicants. And I probably referred about 50 applicants across these positions this morning to the different.
And that speaks to, I think, not only the changing labor market over the last year, but also and I think I've mentioned this before, but our team met in like January, put together kind of a comprehensive strategy to go to some job fairs, to do some marketing with the CEP team, the communications team. And then also I think everybody's seen the yard signs throughout parks that say work in a park. And I think those have been incredibly effective in getting us a big pool, which has allowed us to be successful. The next stat.
Great job with that team doing that.
Like I said, about 50 additional applicants this morning. So we can keep bringing large groups of rec specs. We can kind of keep up. Those part-time positions do tend to transition out and come in relatively quickly through attrition. So we can exceed that and kind of that all our divisions fully staffed. So like the key updates was the grant writer that we spoke to about, and that will be approved. The new classification will be approved by civil service on the 7th of July. Give an update on when it's posted and the time frame for which it'll be posted. Arbor series, we talked about that. Those 2 classifications into later at the end of the year, early next year, lead arborist is approved. Administrative technicians, Brittany Sparks, coming from risk management, and Marlene Fitzwater. They will, by the end of July, we'll have 2 additional staff members.
Great.
And we have so for Explore Nature, they do summer camps. And right now they have about 1,268 campers. And we have about 23 staff members that we've been working on vigorously just to get them on, because they're a little bit later than everybody else. Those people are teachers, they just got out of school, some of them are in college and they have direct interest in those type of roles and working with kids, so it's a lot of lag and they have to get fingerprinted, and we partner with Recreation to get them fingerprinted. And moving into next year, we're working on getting our own fingerprinting technology in this room over here, so we'll do it all in-house. We actually meet with Brandy Sanders and her team next week to
At Recreation.
help us onboard that. And so I just think as we build capacity and I can kind of work on some, and it's kind of a blessing to be able to touch everything because I see where the lag is.
Mhm.
And it's a lot easier to plan and kind of make it more efficient moving into the next year. And I think when we start hiring part-timers, we'll move a lot faster next year.
While talking about staffing, it's also a great time to note that yesterday, City Council passed the budget. The budget request or budget proposal that we put forward in a vote in, I believe, March, was for 14 additional staff people, 9 of which would be paid with funds that we control or that we generate through parks, and 5 of which we were requesting through general fund dollars. We did not receive any of the general fund dollars. The city manager and the administration is being very cautious because eventually we're going to run out of these Recovery Act dollars, and they want to make sure that we don't have additional burdens because we're already projecting deficits. But we were able to get the 9 positions approved that we had proposed with dollars that we generate through the park system. So that alone, as you look at kind of our table of organization, is going to take us from about 160 or so full-time people to about 170 full-time people. And so that's going to have a lot of impact throughout the system as we improve what we're able to do and how we're able to prepare for and keep these parks spaces for the public in tip-top shape. So we're really excited about that. And Derek and his now 3-person team will be hard at work over the next, the budget passes, it doesn't start until July 1, but all the various processes will go forward, but you'll be seeing updates about those positions getting filled over the next year. We're pretty excited to kind of activate those funds and really put the foot on the gas as far as take care of these spaces and be more proactive.
And the salary for the municipal workers has been equalized to
Correct.
1638.
Along that line, for cost of living increases, just out of curiosity, how does that get rolled out? Is it a one-time, everybody gets it at the same time, or is it at a review date or a anniversary date, or how does that?
Well, that happens simply because I asked for equalization and evaluation.
Right, no, this is
For workers, but there are cost of living increases that are in the.
Annually, sorry, yes.
So those budgeted increases, how does that roll into each person's pay?
Well, they do an MPI and mass pay increase through shared services. They don't even let us.
MPI,
Mass,
Mass pay increase.
mass pay increase, MPI.
Because
and is it all at the same time?
Mhm.
Okay, so
They
everybody
got it.
gets it bang as soon as they put that through.
they got to pay period 12, and then depending on when it was actually approved, they may get a little bit of retro pay. So if it was approved in February, they would get some retro pay for the paychecks in between as well.
Well, those are for the union workers. For the other work,
Us as well.
okay,
It was.
But it was-
approved by council.
it's approved, but it's approved on July 1, correct, for the next budget?
For our MWs or in general?
Yeah.
What's that?
Oh, yeah.
July 1, everybody gets that? Okay.
So I'm going in between the MW.
And then one other thing, I don't want to interrupt you. I've noticed that a couple departments have put in bonus plans for hourly workers, and just want to put that on your radar screen that both public service and CRC had bonus plans put in and approved. Yeah. So if you could I would just find out about that and what that means, because I know it was meant to help them with retention and hiring part-time people. A lot of MWs, but I think it was for all part-time people, both permanent and seasonal part-time.
And we still would like to partner with recreation and getting our rec specs equalized as well. Forthcoming.
Any other questions for Derek?
Thank you.
I think I noticed in going through some old minutes, I think at this time last year, we were closer to like 22, 25 vacancies on our full-time people, so we've picked up some slack there, so great, thank you.
Many of these are new. There are people that have left since over the last couple months that were then now moving back into filling those spots.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
there aren't long-term openings like there were.
Great, thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, we've taken up Burnett Woods pavement repair. Is that something that,
That is not, that was
Okay.
previous agenda.
gotcha, oh. I'm working off my old one. So now we're to director's comments.
Thank you, sir. Derek mentioned all the hiring for the Explore Nature Camp counselors. Early last week, I got a chance to attend one of their trainings and just see all the energy and excitement in the room for all the folks that are going to be taking care of those 1,200 kids in camps all summer long was really exciting. So they're fired up and ready to go, and that's gonna be great.
How many locations do we do camp?
I believe we do camps at the 4 nature centers, or we have 5 nature centers. We do it at 4 of the nature centers, and then one of our nature centers or our naturalists take their camps on the road. So they do some in All Park, they do some at Mount Airy, and they do some at another park, which I am blanking on, but I can get that information for you.
Great.
Jenny would have known if she wasn't. So this is a photo from our all staff retreat or meeting, which Mr. President, you were at for a little bit. As you know, we were named the 6th best park system, the top 100 cities in the country recently, and continuing our string of being in the top 10. And so at the all staff meeting, we all stood in a circle, and I got to compliment the communications team for getting everybody to stand in a circle like this and get this really cool photo using a drone. And it just was kind of a fun way to note that, but really exciting. Again, you know, you can see kind of, we did really well on amenities, on access. Access is the one I'm most excited about. 88% of Cincinnatians live within a half mile of a green space. And that's just a really amazing thing, but not good enough. And so we'll keep looking for ways to expand that access. Next up is Arbor Day. We did an amazing planting with Groundwork Ohio River Valley, with the Cincinnati Parks Foundation, with the Arbor Day Foundation, Kimberly Clark. We planted 30 trees at the Recreation Commission, Roselawn Park, which is a neighborhood that has a lower tree canopy, and we're really looking to improve that. As I drove up to it that day, it was amazing to kind of look around and just see that you really couldn't see trees, right? It was shopping centers, it was kind of areas that needed help. And so that was really exciting. The summer camps, the list is here. So we have summer camps at Stanberry, French, all Mount Airy, California Woods, La Buena Woods, and Burnett Woods. So all throughout the summer, we have camps all over the place. And it's that naturalist from Caldwell that's the one that does them in the different areas that don't have a nature center. So really exciting stuff. And if you can go to the next photos, those are some photos of current kids doing camps, but also a picture from Trailside Nature Center in 1947. As you see that we have a long history of giving our young Cincinnatians a real great nature experience in the summertime.
Did you do a blast out? I had no idea that we had 1,200 kids that we've put through our summer camp. That's something, maybe the media team could do a highlight on social media.
We'll note that, but I would be very surprised
If they're not already up there.
I often will be like, I got a good idea. They're like, dude, we did that a month ago. Like, oh, well done then. So, but I will make sure that on the off chance that I will push that on to them. Crone Conservatory. Crone, every month I tell you about how great Crone is doing and how awesome that gym is doing. 2 weeks ago, or last week, we eclipsed $2 million in revenue, which is about 25% higher than we've ever done before at Crone, and just really amazing. We still have 2.5 weeks to go of the butterfly show. Oh, I'm sorry. No, Sunday is the last day of the butterfly show. Sorry, we eclipsed $2 million. It must have been 2.5 weeks ago because we had 2.5 weeks to go when we eclipsed it. So if you want to see the butterfly show, anyone that's watching it or was catching this on video, you have until Sunday to get over to the butterfly show and check that out. It's just been another amazing year for the butterfly show, and to get $2 million of revenue through the Crone Conservatory is really impressive. And will be some revenue that we look to put plans together to spend with your help. The next show, First Flowers, is opened on July 1. This is going to be, if you can go to the next photos. This is going to be a real special one. This is First Flowers, so it has a prehistoric theme. It runs from July 1 to October 22nd. Anybody thought Crone was slowing down, they are wrong, because this is going to be just an amazing one. It's with a collaboration with Applied Imagination, who we've worked with in the past. They helped us with, I believe, Luxottica, which was the one we did just recently. The show last summer. And it's going to have dinosaurs and all kinds of the world's first mammals. So it's just going to be really amazing. And then the flowers will be stuff that incorporates into that. And so it's just going to be a really, really cool show. And I think people are going to be lined up to see this one. So really exciting to see that coming. I also want to point out that for the first time in memory, Cincinnati Parks is going to be in the Pride Parade coming up in 2 Saturdays on June 24th. So if anybody who's listening or watching this wants to walk with us, this is the logo that we have. We're gonna have some banners and some T-shirts. Again, the communication team just did Emily did just a great job of designing this. I think it's a really exciting logo. But we're gonna get to walk with the city floats, and that's gonna be really exciting. And then, as you all know, Pride is hosted in a Cincinnati Park down at Sawyer Point. And so the other thing we're gonna do for the first time is we're gonna have yard signs that say Cincinnati Parks welcome you, or is proud to host Pride, because we are the place where it's at, right? And so we should be welcoming folks there, and we're really excited about that. And so that's 11 a.m. We're meeting around 7th and Plum, although thousands of people are in this parade. I was in it last year with Red Bike when I noticed we weren't in it. Again, in that period between when I was working on getting this job and when I actually had it, I was like, well, wait a second. But if anybody'd like to walk in the parade with us, it starts at 7th and Plum and then it extends kind of all the way down 7th to the west to find our spot. But we'll coordinate that day, and then it ends down at Sawyer Point and Yeatman's Cove for a whole weekend of fun and excitement. I'd also like to point out that before our next meeting on July 15th, Owl's Nest is having a giant event. It's their biggest summer event. They're doing some stuff all summer long, but on July 15th, Owl's Nest is having a huge community event in conjunction with East Walnut Hills and Evanston. There'll be food trucks, there'll be music. I think the CSO might be performing, if I remember correctly. It's just going to be a really great day and really exciting, especially as we look at kind of what we want to do in Owl's Nest in the coming years. I'd also want to point out that Smale Family Fun Days are all summer long. They're on various Thursdays. I was sitting in a meeting last week and got a text from my friend that was like, these things at Smale are awesome. And his kids were out of school and he had apparently taken the day off work and was like, the kids love this. And so it has all kinds of face painting and all kinds of fun stuff happening there. Sawyer Point concert series is in full speed ahead. Lou was here earlier, but just fun stuff happening down there all the time. Some of that's in conjunction with some Thursday night events with pickleball. So check those out. And then I bring sad news to end our meeting, unfortunately. And that is that our friend Tia Brown has been promoted. Unfortunately, she's been promoted away from us. She's been promoted to full-time mom and educator. She's going to get an opportunity to homeschool her son and is really excited about that. And so we're always looking for promotions, and we're looking to make sure our various team members find the perfect job to get promoted into, and Tia has. It is at our great detriment. Tia has been just a huge help for me over the last 9 months. She's been at Haug for the last 4 or 5, and she's been a huge help down there. And so some of those jobs that Derek was talking about is, I think we need 2 people to replace Tia, not 3. But it's been a real joy to work with her, and we're really excited about her. So a little bit of a sad news, but kind of that happy sad news is we're all really excited for it as she kind of hits this next piece of her journey.
Well, Tia, let me take the opportunity to thank you. You've really helped the board. You have kept us current on things, and you're always there with that smiling face that we see today to help us along the way. So I personally hate to see you go because of all you give to Cincinnati Parks, but what a great way to be able to spend more time with your kids and do some homeschooling. So best of luck to you, and thank you for your time.
Louis is the big winner, but the mama time.
Yeah.
That is it for me. Yeah.
Okay. Any input or things to bring up for the commissioners? This is our time.
I have one thing.
Absolutely.
So there's an organization, Springfield Township, called Arts Connect. Many of you knew they had over the holidays. They had a huge water main break. and their entire facility pretty much was destroyed. It's very unfortunate. I've worked with them quite a bit. Accelerators work with them, so they've been trying to kind of rebuild. So they've been working out of different spaces. So I got some of the children's parks books and just said, hey, here's some books. You know, hopefully this will be help to your center, what you all do. And they actually sent me a text today saying that the kids had talked about national parks this week and used the books as inspiration to create their kind of own miniature park projects. So I just wanted to share that they said a thank you to parks and everyone for those books and just how much they've been using them for their summer camp and everything like that. So I just wanted to share that. That's all.
That's great. Thank you for doing that.
Yeah, and I have some pictures too. They sent me a bunch of photos of all the kids doing stuff, so I can share that as well.
Forward those to Rocky. His crack crowd will get that out on social media. It's always great to see kids enjoying things from the park. So
Absolutely.
great. Phyllis, you have anything for us?
Nothing.
Nothing. I also want to mention for those that are watching online, we all know it in the room. Juneteenth is this weekend, and that's in a park where there's a celebration in Cincinnati, but go out and find your favorite park and enjoy the holiday in a Cincinnati park.
Yeah, I believe.
Oh, it's over at Mirror Lake. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
I thought.
Took me a second. I had a moment of panic, but it is at Mirror Lake, yeah, where it's been for several years.
Great.
I heard one of the Bengals was one of the players who is or is trying to do something at the Moorline lawn.
Oh, nice.
Space, so I don't know if that actually got finalized, but I was told that they were doing a big celebration there. I don't know if that worked out. Yeah.
It's always good to stop by the Moorland.
Yeah.
There's always something going on down there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, as usual, you know, if there's a holiday or someplace or something to celebrate in Cincinnati, a Cincinnati park is the best place to do it. So, and thanks to the staff for always keeping those parks looking great and the extra effort when there's celebrations like that. So thank you. I had nothing else. Our next meeting is July the 20th. And so if there's nothing else to come before us, I am going to adjourn our meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.